Alright, welcome back. So, today I'm just going to be talking about the new Unigine 2.17 update. Now, going through it all, there was quite a lot of stuff, a lot of bug fixes, a lot of new features, a lot of fixed of old features and everything. But the main thing is, I get to see my name as one of the featured user content, and I feel so honored, and thank you all for watching and being part of this amazing group. And I hope that I can always be a good source of knowledge for everyone, and I hope I can be a great source of guidance for new people. And if you're new, hello, this is Unigine, basically an engine that is pretty much one of the nicer engines in the market right now, and personally speaking, or opinion, that it would definitely compete with Unreal Engine and Unity in terms of entertainment. Now, without further ado, let's actually talk about this Unigine 2.17. So in order to get this, we should just go into developer.unigine.com. And when you do, you have the ability to click on this download Unigine button. And once you do and install it, you'll get into this program. Right now I have a few projects, and we have the 2.16 and 2.17. So you can scroll between the different stuff. Now, if you go into the SDKs itself, you can add the SDK and you can add the specific one that you like. I have both the previous one and I have the current new one that we have. Now, if we go inside here, you can see that we have a few changes. In the 2.16.1, we had the ability to go to the asset store, download it, and then get it in the asset browser right here. Now, in the 2.17, they decided to just do it from the add-on store. Now, if you go into the add-on store by clicking this button, you get over here where you log in with the same initials that you did for the Unigine, and then you have the ability to download and buy one of these free assets. In the future, there will be a lot more, but for now, let's just, I decided to purchase this one, and I still haven't used it yet, but here I have it downloaded. And in order to use this, what you do is you just go to wherever this file is. So in my case, it's in the downloads, and then you click and drag it into your world or into one of your projects that are opened when you open the editor, and you should be able to use it from there very easily. Now, other than that, if you have older projects, you have this little orange button that tells you to upgrade. And if you go into the list mode, there, the small little triangle button is right there. Not triangle, arrow button is right there. So you can upgrade the world and everything would be okay. Now I can go on, but what did I talk about? The SDK, the add-ons. In terms of samples, there are new samples. So in the 2.17, the CPP, so the C++, has a few new samples, and you can definitely get it downloaded and check it out. And I think that's the most in terms of the browser. Now, in terms of the updates, there's too many updates, to be honest, but we're just going to talk about the main ones. And the main ones are, the first of all is that we have a new render engine, or more like a new render integration, and we're going to be using, or Unigine is going to be using, the Vulkan and the DirectX 12. So more of the HLSL side if you're a shader programmer, less of the OpenGL if you use GLSL. So there will be a few changes for you, but it's not too bad since the skills are transferable. All right, and in terms of OpenGL, this will be the last release for OpenGL. After this, 2.18 will be even for Linux. All right, the next thing is we have, that is very important, is the Panorama Space Dynamic Global Illumination. Now for this guy, there's a lot of changes. So I am going to basically show it by doing it over here. So I have a few props here that I just put up to make it look pretty cool, but in reality some of these have emissions, some of these have opaque, some of them are transparent, some of them are translucent. So there's quite a few things. Now, if I remove the sun, you could see that there is a lot of different types of objects. All right, now if I remove the flashlight from the camera itself, then you can barely see anything. Now, let me just remove this right now, and let me just put back the sun. All right, so this is the world that we have here. Now, what we have in terms of our new update is the PSDGI, the new type of global illumination, or the Raymarching global illumination. In order to create it, you right-click Create, and then go into Lights. And when you go into Lights, there's quite a few options. I have detailed explanation tutorialed on all of them, but the new one that we have is the Raymarching. Now, if I click on it, it's going to create a small circle of Raymarch, and it's basically going to start immediately baking the lighting. And with all these items, it's going to take a few minutes, so, or like at least half a minute. Now, before I do that, I already have two of them. One is for the night and one is for the day. And if I zoom out, you can see that it encompasses a great chunk of area. Now, what this object does, or what this new feature does, is it basically globally illuminates the area using Raymarching, and it's a much faster and a much more performant way, but I still will not use it for the whole world, and rather use it for chunks of area. Now, the difference between what this and without it is, let's just check it out. So in our sun, as you can see, some of the assets here are very pale and very weak, and it honestly does not look like it's taking in that sun reflection. Now, maybe you look at it at first glance and you say, what's the problem? It doesn't look too bad. But if you notice in real life, these metallic structures do have some kind of absorption and reflection in it, so that it actually takes that tint, in our case, that yellow sunlight tint, and it reflects onto that pale whitish grayish color. So if I just turn the daylight on, you can slowly see that most of the metallic has that orange tint, and you can also see it in the building. So if I were to remove it and just turn it on over and over, you can see that there is some kind of natural coloring or natural reflection that comes from the sunlight into this world. Now, if you think that there's not that much, we can just zoom back out, and you can see that the circle actually has that illumination added into that circle. Now, we can definitely make this a lot bigger. I'm just making it this small just to show the differences, and this also works both in daytime and in nighttime. So if I were to just remove this, go into the moon in the nighttime, and let's just say if I remove the clouds itself too, it's very hard to tell where the building actually ends or where it begins, or, you know, it's very hard to see through the night. It almost looks like it's way too dark, like there's no absorption or reflection in these objects. So the moment I turn on the nightlight, you can see that there is natural light bouncing on these objects into the camera, so we can actually see the buildings much more properly. Now, I will click and close it a few times just so you can see the differences. You can see that that really black, dark look that looks almost unrealistic has just been lost, and now you actually have proper lighting look inside our world. And if I just zoom out a little bit, you can see it on a much bigger scale with the circle and the effects of it. All right, so it's not too bad, and it's definitely a great step in the right direction for realistic lighting and rendering. Now, this will help a lot of people who are artists, and it will also help a lot of people who are game directors or game technical artists to see how much difference it makes, especially in the night. Now, this is one of the greatest updates, and if you've seen my old videos on lighting, you'll know how much of a time saver this is, especially if you're doing outside light. Now, if you're inside, it technically should not update it, but it does. But if you're me, you would do an occlusion and then do some extra steps to have like a voxel probe inside and like lights in there, but that's in the future. But yeah, so we have this update for Raymarching global illumination, and it's a great update and I love it, and there's so much more you can read into it. I'm just gonna I just showed a basic difference behind it, and there's a few examples, and it definitely looks amazing. The next thing is the Denoiser. Now this one is basically where it needs a whole new video for it. I can't really talk about it in this small short or show it to you at the moment, so I'll skip it for now. The next thing is water decals have been improved, and they also have black color, so you can do the oil coloring. There's a few other improvements with fixing. And then we go to the next main one, which is the spacers and deflectors for particles. So I'm gonna go inside this world here, and I do have like a rain particle effect right in here. Okay, so with this rain particle effect, as you can see, it's just dropping rain, and if we go inside here, you could see that it's penetrating through the roof. Now the old way of fixing this is actually clicking on the object, having some kind of collision, and having collision enabled on the particle. Now this does not look real at all, and it actually looks really bad, so it's not really a good idea. And if you're someone who uses the physics version of the intersection, then you should know that this is actually a very costly procedure, especially if you're going to do it for all buildings and if you're going to make the rain bounce on all of them. So this gets very, very costly. And in order to do that, you just go down here on the particle and you enable collision. So I'm going to remove this, and what we're going to use is the particle deflector and particle field spacer. So they're found basically in the same place as particles, so just right click, create, and go into the particle system, and we have the two new particle spacer and deflector. So we're going to talk about both of them. So the first thing is we want to make sure that I have it on the roof, and I'm just going to put that spacer on, and what it's going to do is it's basically going to make sure that the particles do not go through. Now there's a difference between the particle mode bound and position. Position is where the particle's origin touches it and then it deletes itself. Now length, now in terms of this particle is a length particle. Basically it's a stretched particle that's stretched from the origin. So there is a displacement, so it doesn't look good. So you use bound, and bound is basically the moment it touches it, it deletes itself. All right, now it looks good from the inside, but if you were from the outside, it doesn't look realistic because the rains is just immediately, disintegrating onto the roof. So what we're gonna do is actually we're gonna have the deflector, and we're gonna remove that spacer. So we're going to have that deflector one. Now the difference between deflector is it deflects it as its name. So in our case, the rain is coming completely from the top. So from basically up to down in a complete straight angle. And what it does is it bounces back exactly back top. Now if we can add restitution and some roughness, then there's like a little differences here and there in terms of doing it, but let's just make it back into normal. But basically it bounces the particle off it. Now you may not see it because it's completely straight down, but if we were to just tilt it a little bit, you could see that the rain is dropping on it and then falling down. And if we go here, you can see it's flying out and then continuing what it was doing before. So the deflector basically bounces the object back, or bounces the particle exactly back onto it. All right, so that's the new update on particles. This has a lot of new cost-friendly methods of collision techniques with particles, and basically saves us a lot of space and time. All right, so with that out of the way, let's go into some optimizations. I'm going to skip through most of these because this is a lot of speeding, or basically these are just optimization and fixing of old stuff. A lot of things have been saved or sped up, and what we also have is new editors for visualization. So to visualize something, we can go into Tools, Performance Profiler, and you can check what type of visualization you want. Let's just use generic. It tells you exactly what it is, how much memory and everything, and how much it's taking over during that frame. Now I'm just going to disable it because I don't use this as much. I'm not a technical artist. If you're a technical artist, this is very much useful for you. The next thing is a landscape terrain streaming, basically loading of the landscape maps, layer maps, and its textures have been sped up really fast. Now I wish I would have made it pre-rendered, but I kind of forgot about it, so I can't really show you guys. The next thing is immovable collision and intersection flags. Basically, if you have an object that has immovable and you decide to so let's say this object right now that we have here, and if we go into the physics, we give it a dummy, and not really a dummy, we give it a rigid. As you can see, it will not allow it because it's an immovable. And where does it say immovable? Right here. So before, what happened was you would take this and you would give it physics, and basically you would have it have two physics, but at the same time it would not move. So it would create overflow errors to the physics calculations and basically just ruin performance like crazy. So now it gives off that error, saving us some performance points. So that's pretty amazing. Next thing, we have DPI support. So if you are trying to make something that's highly pixelated or highly DPI'd versus pixel, then you have a few examples right here, and you have the ability to improve it. The next thing is a little bit of code stuff where you can do you could do a little bit of data transfer between GPU and CPU, and there's a few extra new different ways. I might talk about it when I'm talking about shaders, but right now it's not that important for most people. But if you are a programmer, a shader programmer, then definitely read through this API migration guide and look through that. The next thing is we actually have Unigine and user plugins. So basically now we have the ability to have more joysticks and gamepads and update it in the input device or the input class. So if you're doing a lot of inputs or different types of inputs, so if you have like mouse, keyboard, and you have a joystick, you can definitely have a better integration. And now I believe it's also up to 16 devices, so that's pretty good. Next thing is the Windows refactoring. So when you press play over here and it creates a new window, you have the ability to customize that, and we're gonna have a lot more customization ability. So right now it's still being customized and still being updated as we are going over and over, but until now it's a nice step in the good direction. Other than that, we have a few fixes, a few updates. I'm not going to go through these. Some of them are normal, some of them are not that much. And then the next thing we have are profilers and visualizer updates, and we have this new update. So if we go inside here, let me just mute this guy, and let's just look over here. If we go into the helpers, oh sorry, not the helpers, the rendering debug, and we go all the way down here, we have two new options. One is the max pixel count and the other one's the screen density. If we go into the max pixel count, what it does is the first time you go into it, it will take a while for it to load it, but once you do, what it basically does, it tells you which object is using what pixel or what texture file size. So the red ones here are 2K PNGs or JPGs or EXRs or whatever, but it's 2K times 2K texture pack. The yellow ones are more of a 512 by 512. The blue one is more of a 32 to a 64, so it's something very cheap. So this is very useful, especially when you're doing retexturing after updating the or finalizing your textures or your view. The next one is the screen density. So if we go inside here, you have the ability to blend between it, so you can tell which one's what if you're not too sure. But basically, let's just go full. And what this does, it tells you how detailed the texture is going to be around us. Now, what does this mean? The best way to explain it would be through LODs. So right now, we're in the furthest, we're in the furthest over here, and let's just look at this yellow one right here. So right now, it's only 2 times texture density, meaning it's just twice as detailed as it's supposed to be. The moment we get closer, you can see these, but the main thing is the LOD between each detail changes the further it is, and it's much better for performances. If you're a technical artist, you might explain this much better than me. I'm really bad at explaining some of these things. But yeah, other than that, we have advanced helpers. So if we go back inside here, go inside helpers, we got a few extra new stuff. And we got this thing, rather than being down here, they moved it to the right. And then you can also visualize by masks and viewports. So if an object is in a specific collision mask, then you can see those objects much more easier, or you can exclude them. Other than that, we have a few changes, and we have improved packages. Now this one's pretty fun. So if we have an object that we want to, so let's just remove the rendering. If we have an object that we want to, or let's just say this file over here, I want to export it as a package. So the moment I press it, let's just save the changes, and it will analyze our project. And then the next thing is we have the export package. Everything is about the same, except we have add files from asset browser and external. So if we want to add extra stuff inside here, let's just say new world.world. Then we added that, and with that it came everything else. And then we can also add external files, so we can go outside and we can pick some random file, and then boom, you have a new modified UPackage, which is very nice, very modular. Then there's also filters in the material hierarchy. There's also, for painting, there is new type of filtering, where you can filter a specific type of meshes to be painted or removed, and it's pretty nice. Next thing is focusing, which basically you can focus from far and near. I don't know how it works, to be honest. I just press F and it works. Next thing is selection filters, which allows you to select specific objects. So inside here, let's just click on the sun. I don't see the helper for it. Let's just press F. Okay, there it is. So this is the selection helper for the sun, the selection filter. The moment I remove that light, so let's just say I click on nodes and that's it, then I can only click on nodes itself, which are right here. But I can't click on anything inside the world, which is basically what these filters are. Then if we click on worlds, then you can only click on world itself, which is pretty weird, to be honest. But then let's just choose, let's say, particles or physicals or obstacles. Then you have the ability to only click on them inside the world. But right now, easy enough, just click on enable all, and you have the ability to click on every object inside the world space. Sweet. So there's more flexibility in choosing stuff. Then the next thing is we have cleaner improvements. Cleaner is a tool, which if we go inside here, we have cleaner, which basically removes assets that we haven't used. Right now I'm using everything, so it doesn't show anything, but we have more updates on that. Then dependencies, basically more fixing of asset management, more checking and stuff. There is this program which I've never used, but basically it has updated its version control system. So I'm more of a GitHub person, This is not really my field and I can't really talk about it, so I will apologize for anyone who's looking at this in advance. Next thing is the material graph editor, where we have a new sampler or a new node, and it's shown in that sample texture node, and we can see it and find out more about it. And other than that, we have a few fixes for the material graph, and then we also have a few editor updates inside here. Now I'm just going to move all the way till here. The sandworm tool, this is for people who have the simulation or the engineering SDK and who are pro users of Unigine. You have a new update on your sandworms, and you have a new update on some of the tools inside there that's exclusive to you. Next thing is this, which I did talk about, and I have already done this, so I'm going to skip that. Next thing is there's a few VR supports extra, and then there's the weather radar, which is basically for the simulation SDK edition only. And it's a pretty cool update. So basically you have the ability to map the cloud around you on VR mode, and it basically it's pretty neat, especially if you guys are using that simulation SDK properly. And then there's more support and fixes. For us free folks right here, this is the C++ sample that I was talking about. They have a few new things that you can play around with, and if you don't remember how to get into it, just go on samples, demos, choose the correct SDK, and then download the samples, and then press play to look into it. There's quite a few updates which are pretty nice. Now the last final main update that we have, or the main potential, is the Photon. Photon is a multiplayer network engine which they're trying to integrate into Unigine, which allows us to have multiplayer type connections, and in terms of entertainment, multiplayer games. In order to make it, you just go into photonengine.com, sign up for it. They'll ask you in the email to set password and start. Once you do start, you go into your dashboard right here, and then you can create a new app. Now I'm going to be playing with this for a few weeks before I can make any tutorials on it, but it definitely is a much greater, bigger step from just having your sockets class that we had before, or the multiplayer thing that we had before. Other than that, there's a few extra new documentations for tips and everything, and there's me. Other than that, that's it. And there's a few document changes where you can read in the content migration guide over here, where I'm gonna click on it, and it's basically gonna tell us what changes are there inside our migration. All right, I think I've talked enough and I've shown the main updates. I was unfortunate to not show all of the updates, but we had most of them covered as fast as possible. I did go into detail on a few of the main changes, but I think it's much more useful than, you know, just glossing over it. But other than that, I will see you guys next time. All right, goodbye.